on Mali political crisis. Let's listen to the background report put together by our correspondent, Oyeyemi Ajayi.
The 2020 Malian protest started on the 5th June when protesters led by prominent cleric Mahmoud Dicko gathered in the streets of Bamako, Mali, calling for Ibrahim Boubacar Keita's resignation as president of Mali. This was in the wake of the country's April parliamentary elections. The protest was said to have become necessary due to the Constitutional Court's decision to overturn some of the election results, which the opposition says unfairly helped members of Keita's party remain in office. Keita had refused to step down, but he had been without a government since April, when his prime minister and the rest of his government resigned amidst an intensification of the civil war that has been raging since 2012. Keita formed a new cabinet in late July in an attempt to get a handle of the crisis. The opposition June 5 movement also accused Keita of allowing Mali's economy to collapse, as well as mishandling a spiraling security situation in the northern and central regions that has entangled regional and international governments. The violence, in which ideologically motivated armed groups have stoked ethnic tensions while jockeying for power, has spilled into the neighboring countries of Niger and Burkina Faso, destabilizing the wider Sahel region and creating a massive humanitarian crisis. This led to tens of thousands of people taking to the streets of Bamako in recent weeks, amidst growing dissatisfaction over alleged electoral malpractice and corruption. As a way of ensuring peace and stability in the country, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, decided to step in with the appointment of Nigeria's former president, Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, as special envoy for Mali to resolve the political crisis in the country. But all to no avail. The political crisis in Mali became a major issue on the forefront of ECOWAS deliberation, and this led to the ECOWAS delegation comprising of presidents of Ghana, Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal and Nigeria alongside the ECOWAS president to visit Mali to have a discussion with different opposition leaders in order to resolve the political crisis. However, on the 18th of August, Mutneen soldiers arrested President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita and Prime Minister Bobo Cissé after starting a gunfire at a military camp near Bamako, which many see as a coup d'etat, followed by closing all borders into the country. The next day, the president announced his resignation and dissolved parliament, but despite this, the soldiers have refused to release the president and others in their custody. This move has been condemned by the global community, including Nigeria, as well as many international organizations. Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari says that Nigeria stands by ECOWAS' decision on return to constitutional order in Mali, as well as the immediate release of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, as the removal of the Malian leader could spiral into more crises in the country, with devastating consequences for the West African sub-region. Ibrahim Keita served as the president of Mali from September 2013 to August 2020. He also served as Mali's prime minister from February 1994 to February 2000, and as president of the National Assembly of Mali from September 2002 to September 2007. Many have asked if the replica of what happened in the Gambia is what should be expected now, and how long will the military continue to hold hostage the president? These are some of the issues on the front burner of discussions on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria.
And we have our guests here in the studio and elsewhere, perhaps from Kano and Maiduguri. Joining us here in our studio. First, let me introduce Paul Ejime. I hope I got that correctly. International affairs expert and consultant. ECOWAS, EU, Peace and Unity Communications. You are most welcome to the program. And we also have in our studio Dr. Ebimbere Sefa, a lecturer with the Department of International Relations and Diplomacy, based University, Abuja. Thanks for joining us as well.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, Kieran, we also hopefully will be joined by two other guests if we do connect with them. Dr. Aminu Hayato will be joining us hopefully, and Ambassador Dauda Nladi if we do establish our connection right with them. But let me start with the international affairs expert and consultant, of course, from ECOWAS, Paul Ijime. I'm wondering what you would call what has happened in Mali. Because as it is now, we hear that the people are rejoicing over what has happened. So would you see this as a popular coup, or is it a unpopular coup?
Well, West Africa, and in fact Mali, has been there before. It's a case of the recipe being there for this kind of development. Remember in 2012, it looks like a replay. In 2012, there was Captain Senego who took power from President Toumani Toure over the, similar allegations and accusations of insecurity, of cronyism, and then the fact that bad governance, I think that is what it is. Northern Mali feels neglected. And so the Tuaregs that time took up arms and wanted to march on Bamako. But the military hijacked that revolt. And so they threw a military coup. And so Toure was removed. And so then there was a transition, short like this Committee of Salvation of the People has now promised. Yes. A short one before Keita now won an election in 2013 and then for 5 years. And had done that 5 years, was now on the second mandate before the same and similar events have now cropped up. He's been accused of cronyism, of embezzlement. There is poverty. So there is a social, economic problem. And then the separatist movement from the north, and compounded by terrorism and jihadists and insurgencies. So these have all combined, and then he didn't, cover himself in glory with the election that happened during the pandemic, March, April.
When the parliamentary election.
Yes, parliamentary election where the Constitutional Court took decisions that angered opposition. So 31 seats were, actually given, as it were, allegation to his party. And so opposition had that handle. So there is always the trigger, the driver, and then people capitalizing on that. So Imam Diko, a Muslim cleric, he became the arrowhead, now mobilizing the people. But by the way, Imam Diko used to be with the same Keita, but he has served for now 10 years. He's finished his mandatory 10 years as chairman of the Islamic Council. So whatever happened between them, that's at times you bring politics and religion. So he was now the one leading the M5.
The Alliance Party.
Yes, called the M5, June 5 movement called M5 RFP. And so these people now went to the street, and the security agencies didn't do well. So they confronted the protesters, and there were a couple of deaths. Mm-hmm. And so, but Keita had promised to end insecurity, but he didn't do that. In fact, part of the accusation is that he got weapons with which to fight terrorism, but now he's using it against his own people. So that is the kind of potpourri of events, and then a complicated issue. It's not new. And ECOWAS was there before. President Jonathan was there when he was president as co-chair of an international mediation team with the former president of Burkina Faso, Blaise Compaoré.
Now, I'm not really stopping here. I'd like you to continue, but perhaps to look at it from a different perspective. Like the issue of mediation, which some African leaders, including our own president, participated in. What actually was the content of that mediation process? Why didn't it work? Because from all indications, if heads of state of West African region should converge on Mali to discuss such complex administrative arrangement in that country, one ought to have, to believe that, look, something will come out of it. So why is it that it was fruitless after all those series of meetings? And of course, Jonathan's, traveled to and fro on 2 occasions or so. Why didn't it yield any result? Why did the key players in Mali allow this to culminate into the present situation that we are seeing now?
Karen, well, I wouldn't. ECOWAS would not like for the characterization that it was a failure. I think they will say, well, they tried their best, which is the similar thing that happened during Jonathan's time, but they were able to cobble something together. But that is the issue. If you do not address the root cause of a problem, and you are scratching it on the surface, the tendency, even a disease, if not well treated, can, re-emerge. That is what has happened. I think the diagnosis, with all due respect, has not been the best, not been effective. And when you have a wrong diagnosis, you are likely going to end up with a wrong treatment. I think that is what has happened. And if care is not taken, today it is Keita that everybody is saying, crucify him. It is by the time, and that is typical of Africa. Look at Zimbabwe. They say Mugabe was, a terror. Now see what is happening there. This fixation on personality instead of on issues that, touch on the people, on the welfare of people. They are talking about respect for human rights. They are talking about social, economic empowerment. They are talking about having food on the table. They are talking about enjoying the benefits of governance. It's not government where you bring some people together without. It is governance, human rights, welfare of the people, and then security, peace, and stability. I think that is what when you have that, you can have economic development. You can begin to now talk about political advancement and democracy. So what has happened, and why this keeps festering, is that the strategy hasn't worked. So they need to go back to the drawing board and understand the people. You hear, by the way, the youths of Mali, they have announced that they are going to the airport today to stop the ECOWAS team from coming. So there is an anti-ECOWAS kind of feeling brewing. And then I think they better watch it. A similar thing happened in 2012 when leaders were going to go there in an aeroplane, but the coup makers said they were not going to allow them to land. So you can see that is a repeat, which means that this issue, the French will say, plus ça change, plus la même chose. The more things change, the more they remain the same. And they cannot, so they need now to go back, look at the strategy, and then be inclusive. Hear the people what they are saying. By the way, Imam Diko is also, after his group, M5, met with the coup leaders, he's announced, his spokesperson announced that he was now, stepping aside in politics. Nobody knows what that means. So there is still an ongoing, and the prognosis does not look good, and so that is why it is required. And by the way, you have 15,000 UN mission, MINUSMA. You have AU Miss Sahel, a representative there. And France. So he was saying, why hasn't it worked? It means that something is not gelling. And then they need to look at it again.
Precisely. So we'll just keep you on hold quickly. I'm told that we can introduce our guest joining us via Skype from Kano. Dr. Aminu Hayatu is of the Department of Political Science, Bayero University. Can we have him on air? That's him. Dr. Hayatu, thank you for joining us. We'll just keep you on hold for a while. Let's also welcome from our Maiduguri Network Center, Ambassador Dauda Danladi, former Nigerian High Commissioner to Pakistan. Your Excellency, would like to appreciate you. Thank you for joining us. Let's also keep you on hold and come to Abuja, where Dr. Seifa is. And I'm wondering, Doctor, of course, you are of the International Relations Department, Bayes University. Mali is considered as one of the LDCs, that's the least developed countries in Africa. Of course, a lot of the people there are, below the $1 per day, mark. I'm wondering, even the northern part of Mali is also controlled, mainly by the separatists Mr. Jimet talked about. Was it long that this would have, did we expect that this might happen?
Well, the current insecurity situation in Mali is actually expected. There are 5 key things you need to think about right from 2012 when we had the Tuareg rebellion. You have this, in the last 8 years, you have this popular anger towards the current administration. And this stems from issues of socioeconomic issues within Mali. Then segue that into insecurity. Like you rightly mentioned, in the northern part of Mali, we have the separatist groups there. So you have, on one hand, you have extremist jihadist groups. On the other hand, you have ethnic violence or ethnic different militia groups. And then right there in the middle, you also have organized criminal organizations as well. So there is a lot of, it's quite layered, it's quite complex going on within Mali. And in addition to that as well, you also have the issue of unhappy soldiers or soldiers who are not really happy with the current situation going on. Based on reports that we heard, we know that France spends about $1 billion a year dealing with these different non-state actors within Mali. And in addition to that, the Malian government has also targeted a huge chunk of its budget into defense. So you have all these things going on, but then you also have the wives and children of soldiers protesting about the poor pay or low morale. So you have these 3 things, and then you can also add the issue of what happened, and as you rightly mentioned, during the overall of the elections, the parliamentary elections that was overruled. So all this, including unemployment, he talked about. You also mentioned poverty. According to what we got from UNICEF, I think last year or so, about 45% of the population are quite young, really, really young, no access to job, no good health centers, educational facilities are quite low as well. So when you add all these things together, it's a recipe for the coup. And it's quite, nobody should be surprised per se, because the people were talking about this over and over again. They were revolting, or rather they were protesting about this. And he also mentioned, my colleague here talked about the delegation that came from Nigeria and also Burkina Faso as well.
I wanted us to even keep that.
Okay, all right.
We will look at the content and context of the ECOWAS peace formula for Mali,
okay,
and probably whether it captured, the various demands of the groups, interplay in this crisis. I know, Kiran, you want to speak with our guest in Kano?
Yes, actually, I'd like us to go to Dr. Aminu Hayatu, Department of Political Science, Bayero University, Kano. You've listened to the 2 guests that spoke on Mali. They appear to have an implicit understanding of what plays out in Mali and the complexity of the administrative structure in Mali. And of course, given the fact that we also have separatists, we have other groups who do not agree with the pattern of administration in that country, culminating into a very dire situation in that country, in which, of course, all the diplomatic moves made to remedy the situation did not work. Now, in your opinion, what is wrong with Mali, and how should the current situation, be addressed?
For having me around, and I think I would like to start off by corroborating with the last 2 speakers that what we have in Mali is a crisis of raising expectations. There are groups, there are forces and interests within the body politic of Mali, which are actually for a long time have expressed dissatisfaction with the way and manner the administration of Boubacar Keïta has handled matters. And to make things worse is the question of corruption and social and political instability, all of which you can see it manifest in the activities and the protests that have gone over time. But the most important thing, the crisis, I think, couldn't have escalated to this level to the extent that there is a coup in that country. I have seen it as somewhat a lackadaisical attitude on the part of many African countries, especially under the coalition of the ECOWAS, because ECOWAS could have actually detected and thought of this crisis, actually degenerating into what we are seeing today. But unfortunately, the kind of ECOWAS that we have today is the one that is reactionary, and I have always said that instead of being proactive, it could have anticipated that this situation will run into something like this huge political crisis, which could be beyond control as we are seeing it. And all we are getting is statements of condemnations from African leaders, from ECOWAS, which couldn't have been the case if there was really a rigorous political, diplomatic moves on ground when these semblances of crisis have manifested themselves in the country. And I'm saying that really the forces in when you have a situation whereby there is lingering crisis in a country, and then other countries in Africa have seen that the experience may really be such that the control of activities may be very difficult when it breaks out. We know the nature of military activities in Africa, and we have come a long way to really put democracy in place. So I think it's not really worth it to say that we act in such a way that we allow things to unfold, because Mali is a country in Africa, and we have the African Union, we have the ECOWAS, and we have yet other sub-regional organizations that could have. You could remember in the past when you talk about the actions of ECOWAS, countries are jittery about the decision of ECOWAS. But what we're seeing is condemnation and call for the relinquishing of power, back to the president and saying that we are condemning that this action of being in democracy. So I think there are a lot of things to learn as a lesson regarding that.
I'd like him to do some clarifications, Dr. Hayatu. You said that there's this lackadaisical attitude on the part of African leaders or leaders of the ECOWAS sub-region, and also said that the organization appears to be reactionary instead of being proactive. We would like you to do this clarification because, this is Mali, a nation that's on its own. Are you suggesting the fact that all these African organizations should have been monitoring Mali on day-to-day basis, determining how Mali is governed and all of that? So let's make it clearer, for us to understand what AU or ECOWAS ought to have done that they didn't do, that allowed Mali to degenerate into the present situation.
You will agree with me that when these protests have started and we're gaining momentum and becoming very serious, it was at that time that serious practical efforts were being made. And then, even from Nigeria, you can see that former President Goodluck Jonathan was actually given the assignment to go and see what's happening and try to intervene in the crisis. And I don't think that that's what it should be, because response to that is also a problem, because by that time, all the problems would have manifested themselves in that country in such a way that it will be difficult within a very short time to begin to take actions and to be able to offer solutions to that. And the conflicting parties, it will be very difficult for them at that point in time to accept, the solutions that will be brought to the table. So what could have been done was to really, in a predetermined manner, be able to follow very closely and observe. What is the likelihood? You could see examples from other regional coalitions that we have around the globe. That's why you don't see crisis happening ever now and then between and among countries in that region or within countries. It is because of the fact that the modern way of understanding things is that you follow them closely. What do you think is the reason why other countries are getting involved in the politics of other countries in terms of election, in terms of the manifestation of democracy? Why do you think that the European Union would have to be on ground, far before election time to begin to, carry out some activities that are leading to elections in Nigeria? Why do you think that, conditionalities are given in terms of the acquisition of loans? Why do you think that countries actually visit other presidents in other countries to have diplomatic talks about issues that are unfolding in their countries? All of this, together with the, decisive action and decisions of the ECOWAS, could have deterred this kind of situation that we have in Mali if really serious actions were taking place long before the crisis. And this is what I mean.
Hayato, thank you for your clarification. I'm also aware, and if I'm wrong, Mr. Paul Ejime here will correct me, that within the ECOWAS instrument, you don't interfere in a country's political issues, except, of course, there is demand for it. I don't know. Mr. Ejime will take that after we come back from our Maiduguri Network Center, where Ambassador Dauda Danladi is joining us from. Your Excellency, Mali has, for years now been, plagued by movements such as the Ansardine, the Mujao, the Al-Qaeda, the Islamic Movement for Azawad, that is the IMA, and of course other oppositions. What can you tell us about the matrix of their demand, and how might these demands have crystallized into the opposition's grievances as well as the socio-economic situation, prevailing in Mali?
Thank you very much. I think I will start by really commending the President for setting the tone towards the resolution of the crisis in Mali, and it is our hope that the special envoy in the person of the former President Jonathan will be able to deliver the message, and it's so full that the military junta will listen to it. Now, I think the problem is intractable because right from independence, when Mali got her independence, the Tuareg who are spread in Mali, in Algeria, and in Libya, have been agitating for self-determination. If you will recall that in 2015, when the peace deal was signed in Ouagadougou, Keita gave them some degree of autonomy. And once people begin to agitate for self-determination, of course, it's going to be intractable. Now, the other aspect has to do with the political process. During the 2013 election that brought Keita, it was adjudged to be a free and fair election. In 2018 election, the election was marred by low voter turnout, and at the same time, the opposition was alleging that there was fraud in the electoral process. And compounding the issues was the constitutional court that nullified some parliamentary elections, which the people view that it is going through the back door to perpetuate people in office. The other aspect has to do with the economic situation of Mali. As you know, Mali is one of the poorest countries in the world, and Mali is plagued by corruption. There is deficits of infrastructure. 50% of the people live in extreme poverty. A large number of the population do not have access to education, employment opportunities, and economic opportunities. Now, these are issues that could snowball into the protest. So, when you look at it again critically, the international community, the African Union, as well as the European Union, I think, and the United Nations, I think they have made concerted efforts towards ensuring a lasting peace in Mali. One, it is mind-boggling that with 15,000 UN peacekeeping operations in Mali, with about 1,444 policemen in Mali, the Sahel, the G5 Sahel countries have also contributed about 5,000. France has stationed about 5,000 troops with headquarters in Chad to contain the activities of extremists in Mali, in Niger, and in Chad, spending about $1 billion annually. One begins to wonder where we got it wrong, that the people have now taken to the street and the military has now come back, the military junta has come back, a replication of what happened in 2012. Now, when you look at what ECOWAS has done, ECOWAS presented a beautiful proposal towards the resolution of the crisis in Mali. And the proposal was simple. Let the ruling party take 50% of the government structure. The opposition should take 30%, while the civil society organization should take about 20%. I think ordinarily, without other externalities, I think this should have gone well. But I believe that similar to what happened in 2012, the presentation now is for the unconditional release of President Abubakar Keita and other top government officials that were held, the restoration of constitutional order. I don't know how that is going to work out, but we will see the progress as soon as the special envoys were able to deliver the messages of ECOWAS. It is a dicey situation in the sense that ideological competition between the warring factors. For example, the Tuareg, they are seeking for independence. The Ansar-Din that joined forces to capture part of northern Mali are calling for the institutionalization of Sharia law in Mali. And if I take you back, during Gaddafi's time, Libya and Algeria were also asserting their influence, especially in northern Mali, and that has created a complex situation that will take some strategic action to resolve the crisis in Mali.
Thank you, really, for giving us that explanation, which actually captured the essence of the situation we have in Mali, given the fact that some of those groups, in the northern part of Mali, who are actually, agitating for self-rulership, or those who are agitating for the gold mines, because of course Mali is also rich when it comes to gold, which is a resource that the nation can boast of, and I'm sure that all eyes are also on gold, and that's also part of the economic issue we're talking about concerning Mali, and it's exacerbated problems that have to do with the leadership. Now, let's come back to Abuja here, where we have a Polyjime. But they put all of this into context. So we have listened to two guests from Kano and Maiduguri, all reeling out, what appears to have been the virus, that has affected Mali over the years, which largely, has to do with administration, has to do with the economy, has to do with poverty, has to do with the poor education and what have you. All these are just too huge for a small country, a poor country such as Mali. Now, give us an idea of what you think ought to have been done by either AU, ECOWAS, or other world bodies. Recall that we have some troops, stationed in Mali, and these troops didn't do anything, either to stop the coup or to even, assist Mali administratively to see how the country could have been run without all these dire situations, creating some uncertainties, and exactly, we have one on our hand now when where the president is incarcerated, the coup has been done, carried out, and the military is saying, look, we have to govern for a while before we set out, before we now, create a civilian administration. So put that in context and let us see how Mali can even try to get out of the situation that it finds itself right now.
Thank you, Karen. Well, you can see how complex and complicated it is, but you can also crack it if you follow what I call the strategy, a good strategy. You are right, and Dr. Hayatu mentioned the issue of ECOWAS and the intervention. By the way, with all modesty, one has been involved in trying to help ECOWAS and with the support of EU get a strategy for being proactive rather than reactive that he mentioned. And there is something like the early warning system that ECOWAS has that monitors, these, hot spots and the things that are likely to trigger or drive conflict or problems and crisis. And so if they have that, working with civil society like ONEP, West African Network for Peace Building and all that. So they have that in place. But the other thing now is institutional capacity. And that is what is happening. Because you can have everything good on paper, but implementation and then, being able to do that. So what is lacking is that effectiveness in then utilizing what is on paper. There's a disconnect between policy and then implementation. I think that is what is the key issue. And that is why, if you're not careful, the whole region, Mali will go back even after they finish with this, if you do not employ that effective, comprehensive and all-inclusive engagement that will result in policies that will be respected and then enforceable. If there is by the way, you are talking about the presence of thousands of troops, and these are all working within mandate. The UN, you cannot just go in. They require some authorization before they can. The next thing is that they will evacuate. Even when you have any troops, they backhand troops by France. They cannot really engage. They need some, authorization about the rules of engagement before they do that. So those are the fine lines. But when it now gets to the complex area, is being able to understand the situation on ground. Because Malians are saying, well, the reason they are saying ECOWAS should not come is it appears that ECOWAS does not understand their feeling. They don't feel their pain. So because why? The approach was initially when former President Jonathan went there, he spoke with them and then came back before 5 leaders went there. I think there's something wrong in that approach. Before a summit was also held and decided what was the decision? Calling the opposition, join a government of national unity, and then the 31 MPs that they should resign. Meanwhile, the same ECOWAS is also saying that Keita should not resign. Even that is the demand of the opposition. You say Keita cannot resign because he was elected. So they needed to get to be able to crack that. And there is the issue of religion. You cannot solve this issue, somebody mentioned the problem of Algeria and the neighboring countries to Mali. That is another problem. Libya is now, from being stable, it is now a failed state. That creates the environment for you to have that instability, and then lack of government, anarchy will provide, a breeding ground for people for militants. The Tuaregs are there that we are saying, ISIS is there, Al-Qaeda. These are all,
And the Ansarudin.
And the Ansarudin. All of them are there. The danger is that it is no longer limited to Mali. These militants are now making forays into Burkina Faso, Niger, killing about more than 3,000 people during Keita's time. And Keita, that was part of the promise that he made, and why the anger that he promised that he was going to solve this. And then after how many years, there is no solution. So the people are saying, well, you have failed. And then given the fact that those he has around him, the government, were no longer addressing the issue of governance, no government. They were not talking about the poverty, corruption, cronyism, and then he is not able to govern. There is a stretch of Mali that he does not, his government cannot cover. He doesn't have control. So how can you, in other words, he was in government but not in power.
Okay.
In part of
let's bring Dr. Seifa. Dr. Seifa, it's a very complex situation for Mali. In fact, it may appear to be a secular issue, difficult to crack. First of all, is Mali a victim of Arab Spring? That's one. And secondly, if you look at the propositions, the ECOWAS peace formula and the propositions that ECOWAS, delegation had made, like the ambassador ruled out, it was based on compromise. Keita was to get 50%, opposition 30%, and the CSOs 20%, and there was supposed to be a unity government formed. Now, do you think these propositions actually are inclusive enough to have prevented what had happened?
Okay, I will address the first issue first. So regarding the Arab Spring issue, it's not so far-fetched. I mean, in the last several years across Africa, you've had huge masses of people coming out to protest against whatever administration is in place as regards to this failure of upholding the social contract between the government and the people. So yes, it's part of, it's the same narrative, and thanks to social media, there seems to be this huge push for change from the mass, from the population itself. So I will just segue to the next issue where you talked about the formula. I think there is a flaw there, because like he rightly mentioned, we have the early warning system, we have ways of trying to resolve this conflict issue. And one of the key issues has to do with knowledge and an in-depth understanding of what the problem is. So unfortunately, our delegation, I think we didn't necessarily have a clear understanding of what was going on. We failed to read the mood of the people who are actually the majority. And the one thing we need to bear in mind is that there is this general perception about government or ECOWAS or the political elites focused on protecting regime and not so much focused on listening, or rather the business of governance. That is the major problem. And so there's this suspicion, this quick suspicion, oh, we don't trust these people, they are coming again. It's all about protecting themselves. And so when we have this delegation coming in, I think, there was, in as much as, yes, we suspect them of trying to protect the regime, but there was also that hope that maybe, the delegation would come up with something that would address the needs of the people. That's that fear. Because Keita came in the year 2013, and then when he came in, I concede that he came into a very difficult...
But he won with a landslide.
Yeah, he won with a landslide, but I would concede that there were serious issues in Mali, economic issues, insecurity issues. So he had a lot of work to do. And there was this expectation from the people regarding what he was going to come up with. And unfortunately, that didn't come to play. And so they were tired. They kept on telling them, be patient, be patient. But it's difficult to be patient when you watch people die and then there is no food and there is unemployment and all that. It's quite difficult. And so this is still part of the narrative. The people needed to feel like their voices were being heard. So telling them, oh, we're still going to give kids at 50%, they were like, no, it's not going to cut it, because, I mean, it's the same policies you're going to put in place. It's the same regime protection or I mean, I know I sound like a broken record at this point, but the same issue of corruption, the same issue of misgovernance. So the mood of the people were not read. The people felt excluded. And there is this general suspicion of the political elites. And I think that was why the opposition, a very strong opposition, in the person of Diko, yeah. I think that was why he was able to leverage on, this discontent of the people. And people tend to, I mean, the Malian people, let me be much more specific, based on the reports that we hear from the streets, they tend to place more trust on the religious leaders because of the experiences that they've had in terms of failed promises from the government. So at this particular point in time, I feel that the formula at this particular point in time, that they need to win back the confidence of the Malian people, ECOWAS especially, specifically. And he mentioned that there were some youths protesting against the delegation coming in from Senegal, Ghana, and Niger, I think.
ECOWAS.
Yeah.
They said there will be a protest today at the airport. They are mobilizing the youths to go to the airport
Mali.
And stop. Yes,
in Mali.
And stop ECOWAS. That ECOWAS, like she said, they are not listening to the people. And so that is the big problem.
Yes.
And let's go back to Dr. Aminu Hayatu, who earlier on showed that he was dissatisfied with the approach being put in place by ECOWAS in this very crisis. Now, ECOWAS wants to return to Mali, and from what Dr. Sefia just told us a short while ago, that what appeared to have been a clog in the wheel of progress of whatever solution ECOWAS tried to prefer in the past did not take cognizance of the feeling of Malians. They didn't address the core issues that Malians really complain about. They have tested Keita in power, and they have been able to discover that there are promises that were not met. There are perhaps issues laid out as to what Keita's administration ought to have done to remedy certain situations that have to do with the economy, education, religion, and of course, security. Now, what would you suggest to ECOWAS if the team finally finds its way into Mali, for instance? What would you suggest to them on the right approach to address a already dire situation in that small, poor country?
Well, you see, it's while we still commend the effort of the ECOWAS, like I have said in my earlier submission, it's really not the fact that there is no effort on the part of the ECOWAS, but that the approach needs to be revisited, and so that we can see a better way of handling the situation in such a way that the political crisis in Mali can be under control, because Mali is one of Africa's countries, and there is a responsibility there to ensure that things are going well. You see, we cannot say that we would not draw from examples in the past, like what has happened in 2012. A similar situation is unfolding, and we have a situation where we are faced with a president who has failed in many ways, even though he is considered as a democratic president, but has failed in his promises to deliver to the people. And once the people lose interest in trusting the politicians, because the process of transition itself is really problematic now, because people in the country, citizens of Mali, cannot trust even the politicians, because as it seems on ground, there isn't any semblance of the possibility of transiting power, considering the fact that Mali is a poor country, and all the needed apparatus are not actually put in place, and they have the fear, in fact, of actually the military living up to its promises. So actually, Keita has lost that moral background, so to say, or the so-called moral foundation. You see, there is this belief that any government which fails to discharge its responsibilities properly, it actually loses the moral higher ground to begin to ask people to make additional sacrifices. And I think the bulk of the work now lies in the ECOWAS to actually restore that confidence in the people. And that's why I'm saying that rather than being reactionary, we could have been proactive. Because what time does the ECOWAS have now to do a lot of the workings that it needs to do to be able to reassure the citizens of Mali that a government which is democratically elected is entitled for leadership in Mali, and that it can, because you cannot speak on behalf of Keita now, because all that has transpired in the country was as a result of this problem. There was widespread, corruption among even government officials and inconsistency of the application of the rule of law, which has degenerated into now. So really, ECOWAS need to do a lot of work and re-strategize, because as you have it now, we don't have a reliable source of assurance for the people of Mali in terms of really saying that, okay, things will go well. And that's why I'm saying that things need to be put on the table and properly analyzed to see what are the areas, and ensure that the military actually lives to its own promises. This is the first instance that is going to happen. Otherwise, what it means is that anyone that comes on board political leadership in that country, he finds himself in a privileged position to either decide to relinquish power or not, based on what one wishes. And I think this really is the problem now. So we will need to see a very, very active ECOWAS, mobilizing around the continent, especially, carrying along the very respected presidents, like President Muhammad Buhari is well respected, and across the region. And other leaders, like the President of Ghana and other presidents across Africa, could really be mobilized to be part of the process of ensuring that normalcy returns to Mali, and that the military lives to its own promises of actually transiting power to the political class in a very cordial and a respected manner, in such a way that reassurances will come back to the citizens of Mali.
Thank you, Dr. Hayatu of Department of Political Science. We'll just keep you on hold. When we come back, we'll be speaking with the Ambassador Dada Danladi in Maiduguri. But for now, let's take a quick short break, and we'll be right back.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19, a corruption-free society creates opportunities for citizens to thrive and prosper. Build your immunity. Stop corruption now. Report all acts of corruption to ICPC on this toll-free number 0800 2255 4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
We are glad to have you back on the program. Well, we have a number of tweets to take, but then before we do that, Claire, let us get back to Maiduguri Network Service, a network center where we have Ambassador Dada Danladi. Ambassador Dada Danladi, you've listened to the two guests here in the studio, as well as our guest in Kano, speak of Mali's situation and what we have on hand at the moment. We hear that the ECOWAS team will be visiting Mali, perhaps to see how the team could prefer further solutions to the teeming problems in that country. Of course, for now, the military has taken over, promising to return the country to civilian administration in due course. And what appears to have played out so significantly is the fact that the population, the citizens of Mali, are in support of the military junta. What does that tell you about Mali, and how does that affect or how does that impact whatever mission ECOWAS has in Mali at the moment to see how they can remedy the situation? Does the support of citizens, does it have to play a role in whatever ECOWAS may have in mind as to profiling solutions to what's on ground now in Mali?
The situation is actually dicey, but you see, the euphoria of a change of government will be short-lived, because after a while, the economic reality will hit the military junta and, of course, the population. If you cannot provide economic opportunities to people within a short period of time, if you cannot address infrastructural deficits, if you cannot provide people with the required opportunities, and of course the aspirations. It will not be easy to meet up with the aspirations. You know, Mali's economy cannot change overnight. It will take a long time. This is an economy that is based on mining, and of course the prices of commodity prices are vulnerable to various things. The agriculture, which is the mainstay of Mali, will also take a while before it can contribute positively to changing the lives of the people in Mali. But the reality is that unconstitutional change of government should not be supported. The democratic process, if clearly understood, gives the people the opportunity to vote Keita out of office after the expiration of the tenure of his office. What is required is to build trust and confidence, to have dialogue among the various stakeholders in Mali, and which I believe ECOWAS will do, to put in place an electoral process that will ensure a free and fair and credible elections in future in Mali. But if I may suggest, I think going forward, I think there will be the need for ECOWAS, the African Union, and of course the United Nations to put in place a constructive decentralization of power in Mali. I think if that is done, perhaps it will assuage the yearnings and the agitations, especially from the northern part of Mali, because the oppositions are being supported mainly by the elements in northern Mali, and Mali is very strategic because it has now been, they've said northern Mali has been overtaken by various terrorist organizations, and they seem to be expanding. And if care is not taken, it will affect the wider Sahel region, and by implication will also affect West Africa. In West Africa, in particular, the activities of Boko Haram in Nigeria. So, yes, the people want a change of government. They want an improved social condition, but this is something that cannot be achieved overnight. It will take some time. Secondly, I believe what is really required is for the international community to also build Mali's economy. They must come to the aid of Mali. To a large extent, Mali's economy depends on assistance. And I believe this is the right time now to ensure that Mali's economy is built, to ensure that it has the capacity to meet up with the demands, the social demands in Mali. But supporting an government is negating the principles of democracy. Democracy gives them the latitude to vote out any leader who is not keeping to the promises. And it is also expected that this issue of inclusiveness. I believe during the ECOWAS dialogue, it was done in the past. In 2012, it was done. And I believe it can be done this time around. The question is, will it be a repeat performance where you bring in a transitional government? Or would it be starting afresh on a clean slate towards running a general election within a reasonable time frame? I think this, we cannot preempt that. It will be based on the outcome of the meeting between the ECOWAS delegation and of course the military junta. If you will recall also quickly, the strategy that was adopted during the 2012 was to impose sanctions, was to impose travel ban, was to freeze the assets of the military junta, and of course to put in place amnesty program if they will cooperate. And they cooperated at that time, and a transitional government was put in place. This time around, is it going to be the same ball game? This is something that we will see in the course of time.
Thank you, Ambassador Danladi, for your contribution. Let's come back here to Dr. Seifa. Dr. Seifa, and I would like to ask, quite so, what happened in Mali has been described as unconstitutional and antithetical to democratic principles. ECOWAS is asking, among other things, for the immediate release of those that have been in captivity. That's the president and, of course, his prime minister, and have also proposed a unity government and all that. It has gone ahead to impose strict sanctions, economic sanctions. Now, with a country like Mali, one of the poorest on the continent, do you think those, steps are enough to make the military junta bulge, or might they be counterproductive?
Okay. So regarding the way the coup happened, ECOWAS, the AU, and international community definitely condemns the coup. It's unconstitutional. So that is, that is the valid point. It's settled already. And in order to convey that, in order to give more weight to that condemnation, there is the need to impose sanctions, which is quite expected as well. But if you look at the some of the reports, or rather some of the statements from the military junta there, you can see that they are actually committed to ensure that a repeat of, the repeat of the outcome of the coup in 2012 does not happen. And in the last 2 or 3 days after the coup, there have been some form of peace in Mali. I mean, we're not really hearing of looting or violence going on in the streets of Mali. And the military junta also indicated it was going to open up its borders. Initially, they had closed it up, so the airports are open, and then the land borders are also open as well. So, but for those economic sanctions, I think we concede the need for it as a way of, giving weight to that condemnation. But at the same time, to looking at the impact on the people, the Malian people, it's going to be difficult for them. I mean, with the COVID-19 making things difficult in terms of the mining industry, taking out gold out of the country, because, it's refined out of the country, not in Mali, and as commodity price for cotton as well. So these are all serious, complex issues that we have to deal with. But the military junta indicated that it's willing to set up a transition government, whether it be a civilian or a military individual, has not been made clear. And I think it's also helped to have a timeline as regards to when we can have that transition or when we can have the elections. That would kind of ensure peace, because right now the people are happy with the military, but they are only happy for now. It's going to be a temporary thing because they are hoping for something better. So it's a complex situation which we don't have a direct, a single solution to. So it has to be holistic as well. Like one of our speakers mentioned earlier, and he talked about the fact that Mali still relies heavily on aid coming in from France and other countries as well. So these are all serious issues that has to be dealt with to a certain degree in order to ensure that the people are also happy while ensuring political stability in the country. France
has been a bit complacent, if I may say so, although we know that at the onset of the separatists, it of course mobilized to desettle them in the north. But between 2012 and now, these groups have mobilized, and we hear nothing about France, or maybe I'm wrong, Mr. Jimmy.
No, you are right there, because but it is in the characteristics of France, as a nation, to try to play the big brother role when countries that they colonize, have any political issue. They played that in Lebanon, about 2 weeks ago, when the president of France visited, when they handled that explosion. So the question to ask is very apt, because as it is now, Mali has been plunged into political uncertainty.
It's, an apt question you have raised, the role of France. Because that is one area that people, all the interventions have not addressed. Remember in even after the coup, there was in 2013 that people were moving towards to take over government in Bamako. It was France that intervened. In other words, France has, not just is an interested party in Mali. By the way, in the north, where the government in Bamako cannot access, French troops can, they are there. Occasionally you hear that they've been, there are attacks on them or the UN troops and all that. So France should now come out, and it is the dishonesty, disingenuity that goes with it, and that is why part of the problem that's part of the issue, the factors that has allowed the problem to fester. What does France want in its former colonies, and particularly Mali? That is, by the way, one of the richest African countries in gold. It has bauxite, it has biocarbon, and so what is happening as the unrest is going on, violence? There is illegal mining of the country, because Africa is not zero poor. And that is what we have to understand. But, either mismanagement or, combination of both local or national and external factors that, we try to put Africa down. And it behoves, the leadership of Africa to really take up the mantle and then say, well, if you are independent, because that is it's not a question of flag independence, changing your own native flag with that of the countries that colonized you. I know there are interferences, but it is also the duty of African countries that feel or think that they are independent to seize their destiny in their own hands. So, and not, you can't begin to blame foreign powers. Of course, they are doing that. This is not in their interest that Africa succeeds. Even Nigeria, that is part of the problem Nigeria has. All this Boko Haram that has not been cracked and all that insecurity, you cannot rule out foreign interference. But it behoves, the leadership to be able to get the people behind you about, not just artificial intelligence. You can get weapons, but your people have to be behind you. If you are a general, without an army or a dissatisfied army, you are not going to win any war. Exactly. And that takes us back to the issue of what should be done. We are bringing, now ECOWAS has done it before. Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, where similar things, in the case of Guinea, ECOWAS has suspended a number of countries in the past, whether they still have the capacity to do that and follow through. It's not enough to announce sanctions. What sanctions? The typical ordinary Malian does not require, anything foreign. He goes to the farm to get the food that he can get. Mm-hmm. And so it's probably not going to be as effective as who has a bank account, who has so it now boils down to using those instruments that, because you come back to ECOWAS, even when the UN Security Council, they are talking, they will tell you, well, they support ECOWAS. And ECOWAS now has to step up, and take the bulls by the horn to be able to put those instruments in play about preventing diplomacy, backstopping issues. It's not enough to be sending heads of state. Let the technicians, let those who can do the negotiation go and do it behind closed doors. Some people will tell you they don't negotiate with terrorists. Mm-hmm. Americans, when you seize their citizens, they tell you they don't negotiate. But something happens behind the scene. Yeah. And that is the kind of thing that will now precede this camera, glare of I hope, okay, I said glare, not Claire.
Claire.
So that will proceed. And that is what they should do, and have the muscle to apply carrot and stick. Carrot in the sense that if you find fire somewhere, you don't go directly to, you look at the surrounding and determine how you approach it. Carrot in the sense that you can concede. You don't, create enemies in the people you claim you are going to save, the Malians. Now they are angry with you because they feel you are supporting establishment. That shouldn't be. You have now to break that ice and then go into it with sincerity and with openness, with transparency, to show that you are not biased. A referee that is biased, is not going to get the cooperation. In fact, everything now happens in the open. It's an open sesame. Yeah, the social media is there to see your hands. My people say you cannot go to the marketplace and steal and then put your hands behind the back. They will see what you have stolen. So that is the point. The ordinary Malians are watching and looking at the body movement of those who claim that they are coming to save them. And once they perceive that insincerity and dishonesty, they will say, okay, please, you stay on your own, we can manage, but they need international support. And who else can give that but ECOWAS? Okay. But ECOWAS now has to step up in terms of the leadership, the character, and then the implementation and the application of all the instruments. They are there. That needs to be applied to have effect.
I think what I say that is out is that the approach has to be holistic.
Yes.
If it's not holistic, of course, we're going to have issues tackling or cracking what is happening in Mali at the moment. There is no two ways about it. That's just what has been established. But if ECOWAS, the delegation, is going, they should sharpen, their thought pattern, to see how they can involve all manner of key players in Mali, irrespective of whether they are terrorists or any other kind of group, religious groups and what have you, to be able to come to the table and see how they can iron out their differences and perhaps take decisions that can lead Mali, to make Mali to, go forward as a nation. I think that's what I can, deduce from all the contributions that I have said so far.
Okay, right. Let me bring in Dr. Aminu Hayatu of the Department of Political Science. Dr. Hayatu, I'd like you to, now that we are stepping down home, the opposition is asking strictly for the resignation of, President Keita and his deputy and his prime minister. And the only option, of course, available for international mediators is dialogue. What should be on the table ahead of ECOWAS meeting with the military junta? What talks should be placed and how should it be approached?
Sorry, please.
I said, sorry, earlier we heard the cries of your children. Anyway, I hope they're not disturbing our conversation.
Actually, it's not from my place here. It must be from some background, but because I'm isolated here, there are no children.
All right, thank you. So what I said is that the opposition made a very definite demand. That's for the President Keita to resign. And we've seen, the international mediators would, of course, approach, whatever demand via dialogue. With the meeting ahead between ECOWAS and the military junta, what should be on the table in terms of dialogue? What should be on the table in terms of requests from both parties?
Well, actually, if you look at it, all attempts must be made to avoid repeating what has happened in the past, like in the 2012 coup. And there is a lot of resemblance in many respects with the antecedents, and that the ECOWAS should be very tactical in really, bringing to the table what is going to be, what is going to suit the interest of the forces and the interests that are inherent in the country, in Mali, because you could see that just immediately after being captured, President Keita actually tendered his resignation and dissolved the cabinet. And by law, the speaker is supposed to be the one to take over from that position in accordance with the provision of the rule. So what it means is that the assurances are not coming also from the side of the politicians as to whether they are going to actually be promising in terms of, sticking to the rule of the game. And this is why ECOWAS, as intermediating body, will make sure that the military lives to its own promises, and then transition is organized in such a way that all that it needs to take as a process of transition is put in place. And the promises, because already, even after the 2012 coup, I could recall clearly that the citizens were very happy with the military. And it's a dangerous thing when you see that citizens are even more satisfied with the, intervening military regime from time to time. That means, what it means is that the military are more assuring in delivering the promises to the people rather than what the politicians actually do. So they really have to make sure that all these efforts are put in place for a smooth transition, and of course conducting elections. And the most critical thing is that it is not always the fact that because the military regime is a persona non grata to the people of Mali, it should not be seen as that, because the assumption is that the ECOWAS is seeing the military as a body which is not legally supposed to be there, and so it must hasten the process to hand over power to the political class. But then it must also consider the fact that people of Mali have expectations, and that these expectations are assurances that now need to be, renewed, for the people of Mali by the ECOWAS, so that people can bring back the confidence that they need to have on the civilian administration whenever it is in place. And a lot of workings have to be made, consultations need to be made. The Northern Mali Islamic jihadist groups need to be actually consulted and sat with, so that discussions will really give way for the smooth transition to civilian regime. Otherwise, what we are likely to see is that it's just a simple transition from one civilian regime to the other. When you have another civilian regime in place, the crisis may continue, and even new forms of it may erupt subsequently, because of the fact that these fears and the grievances have not been properly allayed by the intervening body, ECOWAS.
I think, in all honesty, we should also ask Ambassador Dr. Lanladi to come in here as well, as the delegation of ECOWAS is about to, get to Mali and have a meeting with the military junta and other interests. Should their meeting be expanded? Should the horizon of the meeting be expanded to accommodate perhaps the separatists who are in the northern part of Mali? Will it be necessary to do that? Because the speakers here have agreed that the issue of Mali has to be holistic. Because from what the last speaker, said, it is important to extend this meeting to those separatist movements, so that we can see whether it is a possibility to tackle Mali's problem once and for all. Because if the meeting ends up between the ECOWAS, then the military junta, and perhaps the government of Keita, that the problem is just scratched, because in the future it might come back again to Mali. So are you thinking in that direction? Do you have any opposing views as to what Dr. Hayatu said in this regard?
I think if I may refer you back to the peace deal that was signed by Keita in 2015. The peace deal was mainly with the Tuareg, but the criticism was that it did not include all the actors in the northern region, and I think as a result of that, that's why there was continuous escalation of insurgency in the northern region. I believe that the ECOWAS mediation group will meet with all the relevant stakeholders, and I believe it will be an expanded dialogue and negotiations, so that the hostilities will cease and they will introduce relative peace in Mali. What is critical to Malians is the issue of security, and the international community, with all the massive troops and peacekeeping operations now going on in Mali, I think they should concentrate. They would concentrate to at least restore to a large extent peace. What is agitating the minds of Malians, apart from the economic hardship, has to do with security. In an atmosphere of insecurity where people have been massacred, assets have been dispossessed, where there is no hope, despair and desperation, that, of course, has been the recipe for all this crisis that has been going on in Mali. So the ECOWAS team, I believe, will have an expanded meeting that will incorporate all the warring factions to try to bring them to the table and to try and resolve this issue once and for all. As I've said, my own suggestion is perhaps a strategic, constructive decentralization of power, I think, to a large extent, will contribute to the achievement of lasting peace in Mali.
Dauda Danladi, thank you. We'll return back to you in a moment. Let's quickly take some tweets that have come in. Amogbola of Babs says, sit-tight syndrome with no meaningful impact on the lead of most African leaders is the reason for the uprising. It's pointed to the fact that no matter how long it takes for bad leadership, a time will come that people will vote against the leadership, make them govern well.
Habila Zachi says African leaders failed the continent. They are power drunk and mostly corrupt. They don't care about the sufferings of the masses, hence they want to continue being in power. The temporary military takeover and subsequent handling over to civilians is the only way out.
And Raji Afiz Abidemi on the issue of crisis in Mali. Honestly, excuse me. Honestly, if ECOWAS fail to handle this issue properly, it may lead to regional crisis. Because from the look of things, it seems the body is only interested in their paymasters and not the citizens.
Mike Ayako, military rule is an aberration and must be condemned in its entirety. What happened in Mali is highly unacceptable, no matter what was the prevailing circumstances before the coup. The Nigerian government's position that democracy in that country be restored immediately is commendable.
Okay, we have quite a number of them. Oladimeji Morufu, Mike Ayako, Taiwo Idris, Honeybee, Badamasi Haruna, Chris Simeon, Usman Banukantu, Rafa Collins, Mutana Farouk, Billy Jack Solomon, Festus Akimboyewa, Ibrahim Abdusalam Bello, and all others. We'd like to appreciate all of you, and those of you that have not tweeted today, don't forget Monday. And Stanley, Michael Makoji, we haven't heard from you for a while. I hope you're watching. I hope you're good. All right, Kiran, just the last one.
I think we heard from him
last week. You did. Okay. Okay, so finally, what lesson is there for Nigeria in less than 60 seconds?
Big lesson about governance, and then what it speaks to, and then the contract between the people and the government and the government. And that if you don't take care of the people's interest, they will make the place ungovernable for you.
Well, I think Nigeria has stabilized politically. We have stabilized politically as it is at the moment, right?
Big lesson. They need to eliminate eliminate extractive political exclusiveness in the country.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been wonderful speaking to you this morning. It's been a well, discussed topic. As a matter of fact, at the beginning, we were wondering what content, will be like, but now we have expanded the conversation and was able to touch all aspects of that. So at this point, I'd like to thank Paul Ejime, International Affairs consultant and ECOWAS EU Peace and Unity Communications. It's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you indeed. Dr. Ebimbore Sefia, lecturer with the Department of International Relations and Diplomacy, Base University. Thank you indeed. Dr. Aminu Hayatu, Department of Political Science, Bayero University, Kano. It's also been a pleasure hearing from you this morning. And Ambassador Dauda Danladi, former Nigerian High Commissioner to Pakistan. Thank you indeed for your insights. It's been wonderful. And at this point, we'll take on some sports.